Hello, and welcome back to the Disabled Commentary, where I talk about being disabled. So last time I left you guys on that cliffhanger with the meeting with my college's president to talk about accessibility issues, which translates to me, having a meeting and talking, but we'll see how it goes. If you missed part 1, I'll leave a link in the description below to basically the playlist, so you can catch up with the first part. But now we're gonna get into the meeting. Woo! So without further ado, I'm just gonna get into it. As I walked into the president's office, my confidence was still in place, beckoning me forward and into the office space. A giant painting hung upon the wall, just above the plush white couch-like furniture he sat down on, diagonally to my right, only a glass coffee table between us. I sat down just before he did in a similar plush white chair, phone in hand, as all the attention was placed onto me to begin what would be the greatest and politest talking down to I have ever experienced. I glanced at my notes again, unsure of where to start, already feeling my confidence slipping. I went in with my clarification first, letting him know that I was not only speaking for myself, but on the behalf of other students. I did not name them, but I mentioned having multiple friends talk about some issues they had, as well as the fact that I was bringing up my own. After that, I went down the list, starting with the big bad wolf, the lift that everyone hates. I explained it all. The small space, the guards operating it, the safety issues with larger wheelchairs, everything under the sun that I could think of. I ended with boiling it all down to reasonable questions, the first of which being why the guards needed to control the lift's operation. Then I moved on to other things my peers had brought up, things like bathroom spaces being too small, or ramps being too steep, classroom tables being cramped, why accommodation options weren't announced until weeks after the semester started, certain doors being nearly impossible to hold open, and more. I will never forget the things he told me. In the moment, it all seemed fairly reasonable and understandable. He mentioned the budget for these things and how he didn't want to have to charge more tuition to cover the costs. Students already worry about that enough, he'd said, his brow furrowing. Then he mentioned not knowing enough about the lift to really understand its operation, which I thought was fair. If you don't use it, you wouldn't know. Still, looking back, it was defensive, sly, like he was trying to avoid the issue. But then his professional and understanding yet cautious tone felt like something else. It felt almost entrancing, making me agree with him without a second thought. I remember feeling like I hadn't thought about that before, or that he had a point, or these things were just hard to judge. After all, how much can you do if you don't know what you're doing? Yet, still, the intoxicating turnaround was not done. My confidence was being replaced with compliance, and I didn't even know it. Then, the real kicker. With my guard already down, he pinned it back on me. "What do you think the solution is?" he asked, sounding more like a therapist than anything else. I told him I did not know. I did not have a solution. That's why I was bringing this up to him in the first place. Didn't he know that? I only had information on what I and others like me knew was an issue. I only had my own experiences to rely heavily enough on to feel truly confident at this point. I couldn't speak for everyone else, and I knew it. My points were being dissolved like salt in water. Then, with that entrancing, calm tone, he said, "Think about how, as an artist, you're a problem solver. How could you incorporate your art into solving these design problems? Maybe the lift needs more signage for people to know about it." That was one solution, I did agree, but it negated every other point I brought up. What about the actual lift system? What about the bathrooms? What about the ramps? What was the safety procedure if there was a fire? None of that, it seemed, was what he wanted me to think about. No, just worry about it all yourself and fix the problems with your art. Surely it'll work. Thinking back, he may as well have shut his office door in my face instead of charming and manipulating his way out of it. Before I left, he told me he would talk about what I'd mentioned with his team. I thanked him for his time, and we actually talked about some small stuff. How were classes going? How was my mother? It felt like talking to a friend. God, if I could go back, I would have slapped myself. That man was not my friend. He was, and still is, before all else, the head of the school, an authority that needed to be questioned. Of course, that wasn't what I thought then. His polite facade was enough, even if it felt more genuine than most, and likely had some semblance of reality to it. It's been weeks, months. I still haven't seen change. I remember getting back into the car with my mom, spirits high and hopeful, ready to tell her everything. I was riding the high of feeling like I'd actually done something for not only me, but my friends. I felt great about it, like reaching out to the president was the right step in making a real difference. It wouldn't be until later that night, when I had time to let it sink in and my mother to point out a few things that were wrong, that it all came crashing down. Jack's mother also chimed in, and we all discussed it over the phone. My mother told me, if I was there and he mentioned the tuition like that, I would have told him, no, I wouldn't charge more, but you could cut that bonus of yours. Of course, that was how my mother was and is, unintimidated, used to the trickery of the polite nods and smiles and what about exes, the people who have more power than you use to make you feel heard, but also make you feel like what you're bringing up is more inconvenient to them than it is you. Even now, thinking about this makes my blood boil. I love my school. I truly, truly do. But the handling of these issues was poorly executed at best and not even glanced at at worst. But this was just the beginning of my college adventures as a disabled person, one door opening to the next. And to dive deeper into this whirlwind of holding my tongue and hearing even more backlash and stretched truth, we need to go back. Before college, before the long walks I couldn't go on, before my cousins began to be faster than me, before all of it, before I even took my first breath. And that's where I'm leaving it for today. This was quite the thing to write about, and I admit it doesn't quite make my blood boil as much as it does make me deeply, deeply, deeply ashamed that I didn't sort of step in a better, more productive way and really put into question what was being asked of me and told to me. Like, yeah, I'll contact my team. Okay, what team? Who? Give me names. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's just hard. And having never done this before, it was rough. So yeah, that's about it for this episode of the Disabled Commentary. But next time, we're going to be getting into some backstory, into who I am, where I came from, how I got here, what is this person you see in front of you, and why am I talking to you? So that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. I want to ask again that you leave some comments, share this around, and usually I really don't do that in my other videos, but I think this sort of topic is something that needs to be spread and shared, and more people need to think about it and more eyes need to be opened, because it's just something that not enough people are talking about, I think, and not enough people are sort of really considering in a way that thinks about the person around them, or the disabled community around them, or just how individuals experience their disabilities, because it's so vastly different between people. To like triple hammer it in. Can't speak for everybody. I know there are plenty of great advocates that are not me, and I'm not sitting here pretending to be like, I know everything about cerebral palsy, but if it just helps one person understand things a little better, or if it just helps one person with their own disability and like, hey, what could I do when I'm in this situation, then that's enough for me. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.